and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the moronic, bombastic twits in the Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Wednesday. As you can see, Agent 29 is playing hooky, and I am left unsupervised, back in the original Cowboy State Politics studio for the rest of the week. You know, it's weird. I mean, you get so used to having a producer, and then all of a sudden, you have to do it on your own. But that's all right, my friends. I have a great program lined up for you. Well, I just got off the phone with, off of a Zoom meeting with Representative Harriet Hageman. It's a really quick interview, but we cover the big, beautiful bill and what's happening in L.A., and I'm going to bring that to you tomorrow on the show. However, if you want to listen to it ahead of time, you can listen to the podcast this morning, and I'll play the Harriet Hageman interview for you. Other stuff to keep you apprised of. Apparently, Elon Musk is walking back his comments. Yeah, apparently they went too far, and now he's decided to try to make amends with Daddy Trump. So anyway, we'll cover that today. And then one of the biggest stories that I know you're not going to hear in the mainstream media is that 98% of the job growth that's been happening under Donald Trump has happened in the private sector. I mean, this is a complete reversal of what was happening during the Biden administration, where most of the job growth was in the public sector, that is, government jobs. So we'll cover that today. And then, of course, we still have to talk about trans athletes or, transsexual. I don't even know. I'm so sick of doing all this. But the media will not let it go. And their claims are so preposterous that it's not even funny. So there's a lot to do on today's show, and we'll go ahead and take care of that. As you can see in the camera, the studio dog is here with us, but we're going to have to let her out. See? I mean, this is what happens when you're at the home studio. I mean, Agent 29 wouldn't let the studio dog within 10 feet of the studio. So anyway, let's get going today. More than 100 Democrats vote against a resolution denouncing the anti-Semitic Boulder fire attack. Now, if you've been living under a rock for a while, there was a firebombing of some Jews in Boulder, and it was perpetrated by an illegal immigrant Egyptian. Basically took a Molotov cocktail and tossed it at a group of Jews that were demonstrating, and one of those happened to be a Holocaust survivor. Well, there was a resolution in Congress to denounce this anti-Semitic attack, and over 100 Democrats voted against it. From the Daily Wire, and I quote, "More than 100 House Democrats voted on Monday against a resolution condemning the recent fire attack in Boulder, Colorado, on people demonstrating in support of hostages kidnapped by Hamas on October 7th. But the measure, which denounces the anti-Semitic terrorist attack in Boulder and offers a critique of the U.S. immigration system because the suspect was an illegal immigrant, passed with strong bipartisan support from 205 Republicans and 75 Democrats. However, 113 Democrats opposed the resolution, leaving them open to broadsides from Republicans. Quote, House Democrats just sided with terrorists over cops and couldn't even bring themselves to condemn anti-Semitism. They're officially the Anti-Semite and Anti-Cop Caucus. Mike Marinella, the spokesman for the National Republican Congressional Committee, or the NRCC. Meanwhile, the Republican Jewish Coalition posted on X of all Democrats who voted against the resolution, calling their opposition shameful. But the question is this really where we're at as a country? During World War II, the New York Times openly tried to hide the Holocaust, which they have been roundly criticized for over 50 years. Anti-Semitism is one of those things that is just abhorrent in our society. Discrimination of any kind or hate of any kind is really abhorrent, but particularly this one. But now we see 113 members of Congress, radicals in Congress, voting against a simple resolution that says firebombing a bunch of Jews is a bad thing. I can't even believe it. How in your right mind could you vote against something like that? But they did. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries chided Representative Gabe Evans, who introduced the resolution during a press conference. So it's Hakeem Jeffries also. Quote, who is this guy? He's not seriously concerned with combating anti-Semitism in America. This is not a serious effort. This guy's going to be a one-term member of Congress. He's a complete and total embarrassment, Jeffries said. The top Democrat also called the resolution and Evans a joke. So it's not your rank and file Democrats that are voting for these sorts of things or refusing to condemn an outrageous attack, but it is the Democratic House leadership that's doing it as well. Now just think of where we're at. 30 years ago, the Democrats were like, if you were to compare them to Democrats now, they'd be like Republican light. Not anymore. The Democrat Party is a party of radicals. And we see it from the national stage all the way down to Wyoming. There's a number of, on Saturday, there's a giant protest that's planned in, several different towns in Wyoming. They're calling it the No Kings protest. And it's all over the place. But, that's where we're at with the Democrat Party. They're no longer a party that you can have a reasonable discussion with. And here's the interesting part. They are always the folks that are saying, well, we can't just sit down and have a discussion. Well, that's because you have a whole bunch of people that won't condemn a heinous firebombing of innocent people, much less a group of Jews that were trying to condemn the October 7th attack. This is amazing where we're at as a country, my friends. Just absolutely incredible. Let's see here. Evans, the first-term congressman who Hakeem Jeffries was going after, said, quote, I served our nation in uniform in the Middle East as a cop in Colorado and now as a congressman. This wildly offensive statement from the Democrat leader is why anti-Semitism persists. The left is unserious about finding real solutions. Condemning terrorism is not a joking matter. Representative Joe Neguse, also Colorado, who represents Boulder, had pushed for the House to go with his own resolution condemning the attack and criticized the measure from Evans. Among his complaints were that it contains small inaccuracies that failed to recognize the Boulder Police Department or the FBI for their response to the firebombing. Only ICE, the one agency that was not in Boulder that day. Now, this is just an effort, and this is what we do to try to minimize arguments that we can't defeat. You try to nitpick it to death and say that, well, it contains this one little inaccuracy, so we can't vote for it. I don't know, you're in Congress, you're on the floor. How about you try to amend it and fix whatever inaccuracy you disagree with? But instead, you're the representative from Boulder, and you're the one that's voting against it. Absolutely incredible. Still, Neguse, well, he didn't vote. I stand corrected here. Neguse ended up voting to pass the measure from Evans, which did affirm, quote, that free and open communication between state and local law enforcement and their federal counterparts remains the bedrock of public safety and is necessary in preventing terrorist attacks. A Democrat who voted against the resolution, Dan Goldman from New York, griped about how arguing that the Boulder attack is a reflection of the U.S. immigration system, quote, uses Jews as a partisan pawn. Not really, because the guy that threw the Molotov cocktail at a group of innocent people is an Egyptian illegal immigrant. That attack, though anti-Semitism in general is not necessarily related directly, illegal immigration is not the direct cause of anti-Semitism. But in this particular case, if that illegal immigrant had not been in the country, we could argue very clearly that attack wouldn't have happened. But the truth is, why is it that we can't just sit down and call things as they are? Call balls and strikes. Say, yeah, anti-Semitism is bad. Instead, the Democrats have to use it as a political talking point and try to make whatever ridiculous argument that they're going to make, and they do it, to the detriment of innocent people that they largely represent. And there again, and I don't want to lose sight of the fact that this was House leadership that was pushing to vote against this measure. You would think that the leadership of either party would be absolutely against that. I have to think that even in Wyoming, the Democrat leadership, either in the House or the Senate, would be roundly against this sort of thing. But I guess I don't know. I mean, maybe I should call them and ask them. But anyway, absolutely incredible. Let's see here. So you've heard about the dust-up between President Trump and Gavin Newsom. Yesterday, Gavin Newsom was claiming that Trump never called him, and then Trump produced the receipts of where he did. And I mean, it's just been a back and forth type of thing. Well, Gavin Newsom is out now saying that we should prosecute the people who break the law. And now, I mean, an amazing admission from a guy who not 24 hours ago was saying that this isn't a problem and these are peaceful protests. So, for example, here's that same peaceful protest montage I played for you yesterday, and it starts out with our good pal, Maxine Waters. Take a listen to this.
And if a few people were doing that, I've not heard of anybody being shot. I've not heard of anybody being killed. I've not heard of anybody being beaten. So I don't know what all this so-called violence is all about.
So-called violence.
Most of the afternoon and evening demonstrations have been going on right outside the Federal Detention Center. Most of those demonstrators were very peaceful. They were chanting, they were shouting. Most people we've seen most of the evening have demonstrated peacefully, but again, there are some people who are more hardcore about what they're doing out here.
A fairly peaceful protest until just a few minutes ago.
Law enforcement officers try to bring under control these elements that have become an offshoot of what was a peaceful protest and demonstration. Chaos has taken after a otherwise peaceful demonstration earlier in the afternoon.
Many in the crowd have been demonstrating peacefully, but tonight there are still people setting off fireworks.
If you move law enforcement in there in the wrong way and turn what is just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn into a massive confrontation.
These groups come in, they have nothing to do with these peaceful protesters, these poor peaceful protesters. These guys come in to take advantage of these moments, and that's exactly what we knew would happen. That's exactly what Trump knew was going to happen. That's exactly what his team knows. They helped create these conditions to inflame them. This is Donald Trump's mess.
The reality is...
Okay, we don't need to listen to Cory Booker, but that last piece right there, that was Gavin Newsom, and that was 2 days ago, saying, well, it's a peaceful protest. I mean, don't worry. It's all peaceful, and don't pay no attention to those burning cars. They're just using their First Amendment right, and they're just demonstrating. That's it. It's totally peaceful. Well, now... Yesterday, Newsom, late yesterday, is saying that Los Angeles rioters will be prosecuted, but yet he still slams Trump for traumatizing our communities. Let's see here. I think this one's from Fox News. Anyway, and I quote, Governor Gavin Newsom, a Democrat, on Tuesday said that anti-ICE protesters who engage in violence will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, while also criticizing Donald Trump for the brazen abuse of power in sending troops to respond to demonstration. Newsom said during a news address that 220 people have already been arrested in connection with the Los Angeles riots and that officials are reviewing footage to build additional cases. The governor also thanked individuals who protested peacefully during demonstrations against deportations and ICE raids on migrant workers at local businesses. Peaceful assembly is not what Trump wanted, the governor said, according to the president, accusing the president of choosing escalation, more force, and theatrics over public safety. Newsom and the president have taken jabs at each other in recent days over the Trump administration's move to deploy thousands of National Guard troops and hundreds of active duty Marines to Los Angeles, with the governor saying that it threatens state sovereignty, wastes resources, and worsens the situation, while Trump argues that the move was necessary to quell the violence, which, if you've watched any of the footage that's been shown on TV, any of it, and it doesn't matter what news station it is, whether it's PMSNBC or the Communist News Network, or if it's on Fox News, all of it shows how out of hand these riots got. And I guess by definition, a riot is out of hand, but none of it is lawful. None of it is a peaceful protest, no matter how many times they try to say that it is. Now, during the interview with Harriet Hageman, which I'll play tomorrow on the live broadcast and today on the podcast, she absolutely points out that the president does have the authority to send in the National Guard and to keep the peace, to restore order. The truth is, you've got a group of people, probably thousands of people in downtown L.A., that just wanted another excuse to loot and pillage downtown businesses and just to destroy whatever they can. And it is Gavin Newsom's fault that order has not been kept in Los Angeles. And, you know, he can make any claims that he wants, say the Trump administration is, you know, out of bounds, that they don't have the authority, which, by the way, I don't know if you saw this or not, but Gavin Newsom's lawsuit against the Trump administration got thrown out of court. As it rightfully should, my friends. The president, the executive branch, they absolutely do have the authority to send in the National Guard and Marines if that's what it takes. And if it gets out of hand, there is the little insurrection act that the president could use. The same one that George Washington used during the Whiskey Rebellion, the same one that's been used a couple different times in our past. And by the way, there have been instances where the president has sent in the National Guard. I mean, they're not all the time, but when you have mass rioting, mass looting, you have to restore order. And if the local authorities are not capable of doing that, which, let's be honest, there are thousands of people that are rioting. I was just watching the news last night, and I mean, there are demonstrations where the police are outnumbered 5-1, 10-1. So you can't expect that your local police officers are going to be able to stop that violence. And, and so we've just got to restore order. That's all I'm saying. And however that happens, National Guard, U.S. Marines, police force, whatever, there are innocent Americans that don't deserve to have their stuff destroyed or burned or any of that. And it is absolutely on Gavin Newsom's shoulders. And here's another thing. What are they rioting over? I mean, at least with the Rodney King riots, we knew exactly what the thing was. I mean, it was the response to that video, to what happened to Rodney King, which, I mean, that's what they claim. But I would say that if you're going to riot, you're just looking for another excuse to destroy stuff and steal and plunder, all the things that you can't do when the police are watching you. But in this case, the riots are, and they're not organic. None of these riots just cropped up out of nowhere. They're funded by outside groups. And as I brought you the story yesterday of Act Blue absolutely being in the middle of this and being the funding mechanism that makes all this stuff possible. But they are rioting, admittedly, in defense of criminals. If you enter this country illegally, you are by definition a criminal. Your first act in getting into this country is to break our immigration laws. Well, I guess technically before you ever got here, but it doesn't become a crime until you cross the border illegally anyway. But the riots are in defense of people who are criminals, many of whom have criminal convictions. And you know, I would argue that any criminal conviction is kind of bad, but let's be honest, there are some that are far worse than others. I don't remember if it was on Will Cow yesterday or Sean Hannity, but anyway, there's a list of charges that a lot of these folks that ICE has already grabbed off the street. I mean, they range from murder to rape to sexual assault. I mean, rape is a sexual assault, but I mean, really heinous crimes. And still, people like Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass, they're out front defending these folks. And they don't see the hypocrisy in it. Gavin Newsom says that he's going to prosecute those individuals who destroy property to the fullest extent of the law, and yet he's in support of riots that are defending criminals. And let's just not lose sight of this. One of the, I don't know if we talked about it during the interview or not, but Harriet and I were talking this morning, and a part of it is that we don't really have a firm grasp on what the truth is. How many times have you heard people say, well, that's not my truth. That might be your truth, but it's certainly not mine. There's only one truth, my friends, and that is fact. There's not different variations. We don't live in a world, or we're not supposed to live in a world that has situational ethics where things are right or wrong depending on the circumstances of whatever situation you're in. There is the truth, period. I mean, the sky is blue, grass is green, at least when it's watered. And that's the long and the short of it. There is no your truth, my truth. And so when we apply that idea to, what's happening in LA, you can't on the one hand say, oh, these are just really nice Californian men. But on the other hand, they're criminals that have broken our immigration laws. I mean, those two things do not go together. I mean, you're either a criminal or you're not. And in many cases, what we're seeing down on the in Southern California is people defending criminals, and that's the long and the short of it. Well, let's go ahead and take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about L.A., and then we're going to see how if Elon Musk is walking back his comments about Donald Trump. So we'll do that in just a second. But first, an absolutely outrageous profit timeout. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live. You can listen to the program on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, pretty much everywhere. It's almost like I'm omnipresent. If you miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics Live, you can always go to the live replay, which is located at the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, under the live replay button. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics Live every Tuesday through Friday at 8 a.m. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and on X. It's almost like I'm omnipresent. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Cowboy State Politics Live on a Wednesday. Before the break, we were talking about Gavin Newsom and how he can't decide which side of the fence that he's on. Now, he's going to prosecute some of these rioters. Here he is saying it. Take a listen to this.
If you incite violence or destroy our communities, you're going to be held to account. That kind of criminal behavior will not be tolerated. Full stop. Already more than 220 people have been arrested.
Yeah,
and we're reviewing tapes to build additional cases, and people will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Again, thanks to our law enforcement officers and the majority of Angelenos who protested peacefully, the situation was winding down and was concentrated in just a few square blocks downtown. But that's not what Donald Trump wanted. He again chose escalation.
Okay, so it's amazing what the Democrats are trying to use as talking points. You know, if you watch any of the footage, this is the greatest campaign ad that anybody has ever come up with. This is what you get with Democrats. Your city's burning, which, by the way, you could have got the same footage from the BLM riots or George Floyd or any of those things. But the 2026 election is writing itself right now. And Democrats who were siding with all of these illegal aliens, they're the ones that are going to pay the price for it. And rightfully so, my friends. Donald Trump got elected overwhelmingly, and his number one issue was we're going to take care of this illegal alien problem in our country. And, I mean, that is the main reason why Donald Trump got elected. He made no bones about it during the 2024 election. And for Democrats to openly oppose that issue, that it affects every single community. You know, when, oh gosh, I mean, it was quite a while ago, but I started hearing politicians say that, you know, every state is a border state. And at the time, I kind of thought, well, you know, maybe that's a little bit of a political talking point, but it's not anymore. Now, it is not unusual to open up your local newspaper, at least here in Sheridan, and see, look at the arrest reports, and it's illegal alien this, illegal alien that, breaking into an ATM, trying to rob a car. And I mean, it happens in every single community. Now, admittedly, Sheridan is closer to the Montana line. There's the reservation there, and we know that there's cartel activity happening on their reservation. So maybe Sheridan is a little bit different, but certainly when you get closer to Wyoming's borders, Cheyenne, Rock Springs, Jackson, Evanston, those areas, yeah. I mean, you're going to see more illegal immigration. And to say that it's not affecting every state is just, frankly, is not looking at the facts. Well, the governor, back to that piece that we were working on before the break, the governor said that if some people could be snatched off the streets without a warrant based only on suspicion of skin color, then nobody is safe. Well, this is what Democrats always try to do. Everything for them boils down to race. Always your skin color. It has nothing to do with what you actually do, the laws that you actually break that warrant your arrest. If you are rioting in downtown LA and you throw something at a cop, you're going to jail, and rightfully so. It has nothing to do whether you're white, brown, yellow, green, purple, or otherwise. It has nothing to do with your race. It is all about your actions. With actions come responsibilities. That every single person, and I know we've gotten away from this in recent years, but you are responsible for what you do. All actions have consequences, whether good or bad. And you don't get to just throw a brick at a cop car and walk away from it. I mean, we are, in many cases, living in a time where it is absolute lawlessness. That it doesn't matter what you do, you're not going to be prosecuted for it. And, you know, that's why criminals and these folks down in L.A., that's why they're rioting, because they know that based on previous experience that they're not going to get prosecuted. It didn't happen with the BLM riots. It didn't happen with George Floyd. It didn't happen with all of those other times where buildings were destroyed, property was burned, private property was damaged, stores were looted, and nothing happened. So why should we assume that anybody in downtown L.A. right now is going to think any different? They shouldn't. But the truth is, we have to restore responsibility for actions, my friends. And this governor, Gavin Newsom, I don't know if he thinks that he's going to be president or not. I'm sure he would love to be sitting in that center seat. But here's what he says. This tells you how detached from reality he is, or how stupid that he thinks you are. Quote, Trump and his loyalists, they thrive on division because it allows them to take more power and exert more control. Oh, and by the way, Trump, he's not opposed to lawlessness and violence as long as it serves him. What more evidence do we need than January 6th? Ah, yes, they all go back to January 6th. My friends, there is absolutely no comparison whatsoever between what happened on January 6th and what is happening in downtown LA. I didn't see the Capitol building being torched. I didn't see cop cars being destroyed and set on fire. I didn't see a whole bunch of police officers. No matter what the Democrats say, there were not a whole bunch of police officers that were injured. There was only one person that was killed during January 6th, and that was Ashley Babbitt, and he was shot by a Capitol police officer. There is no comparison whatsoever at all. And if there were, you wouldn't have seen people like Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger and what's that other idiot's name? Anyway, you wouldn't have seen them destroying all the records of their unselect committee. The point is, my friends, that Democrats, they don't want to deal with what's actually happening on the ground. They refuse to take responsibility for anything that they do. And instead, it's all based on race. It's all Trump's fault. And of course, all the ills of the world are clearly Trump's fault. It's just absolutely infuriating. But there is one person who you probably would never guess that is speaking out against what's happening in downtown LA. And, when this guy was running for office, I swore up and down that he was nothing more than a radical. And then he had his stroke and came out of his stroke, and he seems to be one of the more reasonable Democrats. I'm speaking of John Fetterman. This is from the Daily Caller. John Fetterman says that this is anarchy, and he rips fellow Democrats for not condemning the LA riots. And I quote from the Daily Caller, Democrat Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman took to social media on Monday to criticize his fellow Democrats for not denouncing the violent riots that broke out in Los Angeles after an immigration and customs enforcement raid. In a post on X, Fetterman said that he was disappointed in his party's failure to take a firm stand against the destruction, calling the situation, quote, anarchy and true chaos. He said that the Democrat Party risks losing its moral high ground when it fails to unequivocally condemn such actions. Quote, I unapologetically stand for free speech, peaceful demonstrations, and immigration. But this is not that. This is anarchy and true chaos, Fetterman wrote. My party loses the moral high ground when we refuse to condemn setting cars on fire, destroying buildings, and assaulting law enforcement. Now, President Donald Trump deployed the National Guard to Los Angeles Saturday after riots erupted following an ICE raid at a Home Depot. That's not what started it. I mean, these protests are not organic. They're absolutely organized. And as I brought you the story yesterday, how they're being funded by Act Blue, the Democrat fundraising arm. So, I mean, none of this is organic at all. Let's see here. So, yeah, anyway, let's move on. All of these riots, I mean, in my personal opinion, we got two options. Either A, let the Marines go in and restore law and order. That's probably the better option out of all of it. Or B, just let it burn. Pull everything out and say, you take care of it. We'll deal with the after effects after your cities are burned to the ground. Because, I mean, that's what the Democrats really want. They want to use that and be able to blame Trump for it. And the reality is that we have to have law and order. If politicians in California won't do anything, somebody's got to. And it's, the president has decided that he's going to be the guy that's going to take care of that. I went ahead and opened up the phone lines. The phone number here in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989 if you want to be part of the program. If you want to talk about the riots in LA or anything that I've got in the stack of stuff today, go ahead and give me a call. One more time. That phone number is 307-374-8989. Just go ahead and give me a call and we'll talk about it. Now, over the weekend on Saturday, I published a podcast that, we talked about this, I called it the Trump-Elon Musk food fight, which that's kind of what it was. And the way that I described it was it is reminiscent of a bunch of third graders that have been left unattended. And it was just, a back and forth between two guys that, they were friends not that long ago. But, let's all admit, when you got people, you're dealing with people that have huge egos. I wouldn't know anything about that, of course. But Donald Trump and Elon Musk going back and forth. Now, I did have some exclusive audio that I played for you yesterday on the program. And I mean, in fact, it's so exclusive that it's that Cowboy State Politics is the only program that has it because we made it with AI. So admittedly, this is not true, but it's funny as all get out. So here is, Trump's first volley. Well, actually, you know what? We should go to Elon. I mean, this food fight, it got so nasty that you probably heard something like this, or this would not be out of the realm of possibility.
What most people don't realize is that Trump wasn't just on Epstein's island. Trump is Jeffrey Epstein. Think about it. It's the only thing that makes sense. I'd stake the lives of 4 of my 36 children on it.
Yeah. So obviously kind of funny. Trump is Epstein. But that's how hyperbolic the back and forth got between Donald Trump and Elon Musk. And, I'm glad that I did the interview with Harriet Hageman this morning because she goes into a lot of all the really good stuff that's in the big, beautiful bill. And I think to some degree, Elon Musk was just reacting to some of the things that he didn't like in the big, beautiful bill, one of those being all of the EV subsidies. So, he kind of tried to walk it back. And again, I played this for you yesterday, but, I was hoping that we might see some evidence of maybe there being a reconciliation between the two. But take a listen to this one, more exclusive AI audio.
If I had a message to Donald, it would be, please let me come back. Let's start Doge up again, just like it was before. And let's pretend none of this ever happened. I really miss getting to sleep in my tent on the White House lawn. Donnie, please, I'm begging you to take me back.
Okay, so funny. Come on. It's that is so close to what the back and forth, the hyperbole that's in those AI clips is pretty close to what actually happened. But according to Fox News, turns out I was right again. They're going to reconcile, which I don't think that this was a big giant revelation. I don't think this is one of those I gotcha moments. But it seems that Elon Musk is kind of walking back some of the things that he said from Fox News, and I quote, tech executive Elon Musk said Wednesday that he regrets making some of his recent social media posts attacking President Donald Trump, admitting that they, quote, went too far. Here's what he said on X. I regret some of my posts about President Donald Trump last week. They went too far. This comes as a recent public spat between the two as Musk began criticizing Trump for his big, beautiful spending bill, which, by the way, it's not a spending bill. And Representative Hageman goes into great detail about why it is not a spending bill and why the CBO has scored it so unfairly, the CBO is jam-packed full of a bunch of Democrats. So, of course, they're going to call anything that Trump does a big spending bill. But anyway, make sure that you go listen to the podcast right after today's program. Should be published by about 11 o'clock. Anyway, so the big spending bill. After the billionaire tech executive spent months working to cut wasteful spending as a part of the Democrat Department of Government Efficiency, which Musk has since departed. At one point, Musk claimed that Trump was in the Justice Department's files on its investigation into accused pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, saying that that's why the president's administration has not made those records public. Quote, time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files, Musk wrote. That's the real reason why they haven't been made public. Have a nice day, Donald. Musk later deleted that post. Other posts from Musk included a claim that Donald Trump would not have won the election without his help, while accusing Trump of ingratitude. In another post, Musk suggested that Trump should be impeached and replaced with Vice President Vance. So this thing got pretty hyperbolic, pretty back and forth. Let's see here. Trump said last week that he's not interested in talking to Musk, telling Fox News that Elon's totally lost it, end quote. The president also said that while speaking with reporters in the Oval Office last week, that he was, quote, very disappointed in Musk's vocal criticism of his spending bill. Again, it's not a spending bill. Trump claimed that Musk knew that what was in the bill and didn't have a problem with it until the electric vehicle incentives were cut, an assessment Musk slammed as false. Trump also criticized Musk on social media, saying in one post, Elon was wearing thin. I asked him to leave. I took away his EV mandate, and that forced everyone to buy electric cars that nobody else wanted, that he knew for months I was going to do, and he just went crazy. So, I think if you look at a lot of the posts, that it is reminiscent of a couple of a couple of children going back and forth, trying to come up with the best insult that they possibly can. And this is one of those areas that I wish Trump would just, take a step back and not engage. A lot of the times, it's better. It's a better way to deal with some of these trolls. And I'm not saying that Elon Musk is a troll. I'm just saying in my personal life, I get a lot of them. Some of the best way is just to completely ignore them. Don't give them any airtime. Don't give them any headspace at all. Don't. And by the way, that's my number one piece of advice. If you're going to write something or do a podcast or take a step out in public, just don't read the comments. Most people are not trying to help you. Most people are just trying to tear you down because they don't have the initiative or the talent to do whatever it is that you're doing. So anyway, that's kind of a sidebar to this. But I really thought that this spat was unnecessary. And I think that professional people ought to be able to handle things in a professional manner and not go on social media and bash each other when they just spent the last 8 months working together. I know that things go south. Certainly that happened has happened with a couple of my ventures. But the theory is you ought to be able to talk about things reasonable. But there again, that assumes that you're dealing with a reasonable person. Yet another thing that I have some experience with, not dealing with reasonable people. So anyway, hopefully they continue to reconcile and they get back to business. Musk building spaceships and going to Mars. Donald Trump saving the country. Here's one that I think that you can file in the, we totally knew that was happening. And this is just more detail added to it. From Just the News, there's a giant report out that says that the Biden administration used January 6th to artificially inflate domestic terrorism threats. And that's all coming from declassified intel. Now, this is a pretty gigantic article, and I'm probably not going to be able to get all the way through it before the break, but we'll go ahead and give it a try. It's from Just the News, and Just the News is John Solomon's outlet. I really respect John Solomon as an investigative reporter. He's probably one of the only ones that's doing investigative journalism anymore, and this is one of his projects, and I quote, "Newly declassified intelligence now shows that most of the reported rise in the number of domestic terrorism cases cited by the Biden administration as a basis for instituting a sweeping expansion of federal law enforcement was actually tied to only one single event that tipped the scales in their favor, and that was the Capitol riot on January 6th. The artificial inflation of the domestic terrorism threat was revealed in a newly declassified intelligence record from early 2022, made public by the DNI Tulsi Gabbard earlier this year. The declassified Special Analysis Report by U.S. intelligence and law enforcement agencies from February 2022 revealed that, quote, 61% of all alleged domestic terrorism-related cases being investigated by the FBI at the time were related to the Capitol riot. Now, think about that number. 61% of all domestic terrorism cases that were being investigated were related to January 6th. And they stemmed from that one instance in Washington, D.C. Now, let's just take a step back on that just for a second. If you were anywhere around Washington, D.C. on January 6th, you probably got a visit from the FBI. You didn't have to have your picture taken at the Capitol. You didn't have to step foot on the Capitol grounds. If your phone pinged in or around Washington, D.C., then you were getting a visit from the FBI. Now, the Biden administration had long been accused by conservatives and civil libertarians of dodging reality for 4 years, and he and his party made as much political capital as possible out of the riot, calling it an insurrection and a horrific event of domestic terrorism. Thus, the administrative apparatus sought to increase its authority and police powers to pursue domestic terrorists more aggressively. Now, the truth is that if January 6th was an insurrection, I'm not saying it was, I'm saying if, it was the most poorly executed, poorly armed, poorly planned, poorly funded insurrection in the history of the world. It was not an insurrection. Now, it was a riot. I'll give you that. But we all know why the term Read You the Riot Act exists, because it is easy to incite a crowd. And I'm not saying Donald Trump incited anything. In fact, I'm saying exactly the opposite. There were people like Ray Epps in the crowd that were trying to get people fired up and storm the Capitol. In fact, the truth is that Donald Trump stood on a stage and he said, peacefully and patriotically, make your concerns heard. Now, a riot is not, by definition, is not peaceful. Now, the Democrats, they selectively used all of the footage from the riot and left out the part where Trump is saying, peacefully and patriotically, make your voices heard. And they used that to their political benefit as aggressively as they could possibly do. Now, at the same time that argument was being made, neither Biden nor his subordinates told the public just how overweighted the riot was in their data, that they used the January 6th riot to legitimize just about every investigation of domestic terrorism across the country. Until recently classified documents put together in early 2022 by the Joint Analytic Cell on Domestic Violent Extremism run by the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and the National Counterterrorism Center. The document was declassified by Tulsi Gabbard earlier this year. Now, January 6th actually accounted for 78% of domestic terrorism arrests in 2021. 78%. Now, the FBI is investigating approximately 2,950 domestic terrorism-related cases, 61% of which are related to the January 6th siege at the U.S. Capitol. The then classified Biden administration analysis revealed in 2022. The size and complexity of the then classified Biden administration analysis related investigations have required the Department of Justice to include the FBI to surge resources to investigate and prosecute Capitol siege participants while maintaining an agile security posture. So, in other words, the Biden administration gave, an open book to the FBI to say, use January 6th as your basis for investigating a whole bunch of different things. Now, the FBI, the revelation was found in a subsection on, quote, fatal domestic violent extremist attacks and FBI investigations, despite the fact that, contrary to the repeated claims of many Democrats, the Capitol rioters didn't kill anyone. The only person that was killed on January 6th was Ashley Babbitt. Earlier in the intelligence analysis, the newly released document had contended that, quote, the number of pending FBI terrorism investigations more than doubled in 2021, from about 1,400 to 2,900, in part because of cases related to the siege on the Capitol. The public was never told of any of this. The phrase "in part" downplayed the reality and was highly misleading. The 61% figure added up to roughly 1,800 new domestic terrorism cases, which means that, based on their own figures, there would have actually been roughly 300 fewer domestic terrorism-related cases in 2021 than in 2020, if not for nearly 2,000 Capitol riot cases being dubbed domestic terrorism. The declassified analysis also revealed that with regard to the number of alleged domestic terrorism-related arrests in 2021, 78% of those arrests related to the January 6th siege. Then, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki announced only a few days after Biden was inaugurated as president that Biden had ordered a review of the alleged rising domestic terrorism threat, citing January 6th as the sole example. Quote, the January 6th assault on the Capitol and the tragic deaths and destruction that occurred underscored what we have long known. The rise of domestic violent extremism is a serious and growing national threat, Psaki told news outlets. The Biden administration will confront this threat with the necessary resources and resolve. So anybody, and let me just kind of exaggerate a little bit, but just characterize this for you. According to the Biden administration, January 6th allowed them to label pretty much anybody that they disagreed with a domestic terrorist under any circumstances whatsoever. So, for example, if you were, demonstrating against pornography books in the library, well, maybe that might be domestic terrorism. Let's see, I've got a list here. Hold on. See, I told you this article was pretty long. Here we go. So some of those investigations that were dubbed domestic terrorism resulted this way. In Utah of May of 2021, 11 individuals were charged with disorderly conduct and disrupting a public meeting after protesting a school mask mandate. Now, in this list, I should tell you that after the initial charges, investigations were opened into school boards. Now, let's not forget Merrick Garland's letter to the School Board Association saying that they're classifying school board parents as domestic terrorists. In Miami-Dade County in Florida of 2022, Caleb Freestone was arrested for disorderly conduct, trespassing after a warning, and resisting arrest without violence during a heated school board meeting during discussing sex education textbooks. Glendale, California, Ball State University, Conway, Arkansas. So the list goes on and on, my friends. There were a tremendous amount of investigations that were started by the FBI, and they were all done because of January 6th. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know of anybody in my local community who got fired up at a school board meeting that was doing so because of January 6th. But that was the narrative that the Democrats were using all along, that because of January 6th, all of this other domestic extremism was coming to the forefront. Think about how many times we heard a variety of different things was white supremacy. In fact, old Susan Stubson, right here in the great state of Wyoming, wrote a New York Times piece saying that we have a problem with Christian nationalists trying to relate the Christian right to white supremacy. I mean, this was everywhere. And it wasn't just the Biden administration that was trying this. It was state government officials. It was local government officials across the country using January 6th as the basis to launch investigations. Let's see here. Page 3. Now, victims of the 2021 Tulsa massacre bore the terrible brutality of domestic terrorists of their era. Victims of the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing suffered the awful inhumanity of domestic terrorists of their time. Victims in Charleston, El Paso, Pittsburgh, Conway, and even the U.S. Capitol now join this tragic history. The Biden strategy document argued. The same document, and we're talking about a document that legitimized the increase in investigations from the FBI. But that same document never disclosed to the public that one key difference between the other events that were cited, all of those things, Oklahoma City, El Paso, Charleston, all of them, never cited that the Capitol riot was that. Unlike the perpetrators in the previous deadly domestic terrorist attacks, the January 6th rioters didn't kill anybody. Not a single person. And here is the narrative, right? That you have to equate the two. That you have to say that all of these, the January 6th was the same as all of these other things. That it's the worst event since the Civil War. I heard that claim over and over and over. And you have to leave out the part that nobody died, nobody was killed by Capitol rioters during January 6th. But you just create the narrative and you repeat it enough that people end up believing it. Even on some of my posts today, I put up a teaser for the Harriet Hageman interview that, by the way, I'm going to play after today's live program. But there were still people that were commenting, yeah, well, she supported those January 6th people. To quote Harriet Hageman at a fairly recent town hall, that's over. It's been over for a long time. And to bring it up is just is absolutely ridiculous. So anyway, there's this document that the Biden administration was floating around. And here's some more of what it said. Quote, the intelligence community assesses that domestic violent extremists, or DVEs, who are motivated by a range of ideologies and galvanized by recent political and societal events in the United States, pose an elevated threat to the homeland in 2021. The Biden-era domestic terrorism document argued, going on to again cite the Capitol riot. Enduring DVE, or domestic violent extremists, motivations pertaining to biases against minority populations and perceived government overreach will almost certainly continue to drive DVE radicalization and mobilization to violence. All right, so in other words, if you oppose the huge expansion of government that happened under the Biden administration, then you are part of one of these domestic violent extremist groups. It continues. Newer socio-political developments, such as narratives of fraud in the recent general election, so that is people questioning the results of the election. So if you do that, automatically you are a domestic violent extremist. The emboldening impact of the violent breach of the Capitol, there's January 6th again, conditions related to the COVID-19 pandemic, and conspiracy theories promoting violence will almost certainly spur some DVEs to try to engage in violence this year. So there wasn't an investigation based on credible information. There wasn't an investigation based on any sort of evidence at all. Rather, it was an assertion. It was an assertion that because of the January 6th riot, you were going to see all of this violent extremism sweep the country. That is the claim that the Biden administration was making. Now enter Merrick Garland. Then Attorney General Merrick Garland declared in 2022 that, quote, there is no higher priority for us than at the Department of Justice than going after those involved in January 6th, calling the DOJ's inquiry one of the largest, most complex, and most resource-intensive investigations in our history. Now, let's just talk about that statement for just a second. There is no bigger priority than tracking down all of these violent January 6th people. No bigger priority. There's that, jihadis in the country, terrorist cells in the country, people that want to do mass shootings or, robberies, or perhaps people who would like to riot in downtown LA. There is no bigger priority to the FBI under Merrick Garland than January 6th. That's an outrageous statement that is their highest priority. It tells you exactly where the Biden administration was going and where they thought their political capital was going to be at. That if they were successful in pushing January 6th as the largest invasion of U.S. democracy in our country's history, that was how they were going to try to win the election. And they used the Department of Justice to do it. Now, FBI Director Kash Patel has now said that during his late January confirmation hearing before the Senate that, quote, I do not agree with the commutation of any commutation of any sentence of any individual who committed violence against law enforcement. Okay, so nobody is getting pardoned if they committed violence against law enforcement officers, though, and Trump did pardon pretty much all of the remaining suspects in the January 6th debacle. Patel also said that, quote, I also believe that America is not safer because of President Biden's commutation of a man, Leonard Peltier, who murdered 2 FBI agents. So it goes both ways. President Donald Trump issued pardons and commutations in January of this year to hundreds of defendants who had been charged by the DOJ for their involvement in the Capitol riot, and rightfully so. A lot of those people spent months, if not years, in solitary confinement in the D.C. gulag simply because they were on the Capitol grounds. Not because they had done anything wrong, but just because they were there. Now then, FBI Director Christopher Wray and DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas and other Biden-era law enforcement and intelligence leaders repeatedly cited the alleged vast increase in domestic terrorism cases to justify their arguments that domestic terrorism threat has significantly increased. But they never publicly revealed that the increase in domestic terrorism was overwhelmingly sourced from a one-day riot at the U.S. Capitol. So all of those excuse me just a second. All of those arguments that were used by the Biden administration to say that there is an increased terror threat, all of them were predicated on January 6th. And as Merrick Garland said, there is no other higher priority for the FBI and the DOJ than to go after the participants of January 6th. Now, why am I spending so much time on this? Because I want to point out the level of corruption that did exist, and I hope does not exist anymore, at the U.S. Department of Justice. That because individuals disagreed with the administration, because they chose to voice their concerns in admittedly a loud way and in some ways a criminal way, but the parents disagreeing with school boards are now somehow domestic terrorists. It tells you that the Biden administration and liberals in general, they can't abide any dissent. And the reason for that is they know that their ideas don't really work in the real world. That's why they have to shove them through force. through the entire Biden administration, the Green New Deal, the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, all of the things that they pushed through, they rammed them through Congress, and they forced you to abide with them. Think about all the mandates that were issued by light bulbs and refrigerators and driving EV cars and all of that, forcing you to trying to force you to take a vaccine. All of those things have to be forced because they don't actually work in the real world. And if you are the party that is pushing a policy that has failed ideas behind it, you can't have any dissent. It is very reminiscent of just about every single Marxist regime that has ever happened in the history of the world. They have to stamp out dissent, because if you have one person speaking the truth, and it doesn't matter who it is, that person is a threat to the entire administration. And fortunately, it wasn't just one person in the last election that was speaking the truth about the Biden administration. It was a whole bunch of people, which is why they lost in a complete and utter landslide. And rightfully so. I mean, when you lie to the American people over and over and over, you deserve to not be in office any longer. I mean, that's just the way things go. And thankfully, enough good people stepped up and did the right thing and ran for office. Anyway, we'll continue. I got job numbers right after the break.
U.S. Coin Capital, we hear from Americans across the United States who have a growing concern about the future purchasing power of U.S. paper money. Many Americans are looking for an alternative for long-term capital. For more than 35 years, the people at U.S. Coin Capital have educated American investors on how to properly accumulate United States gold and silver coins. Call us at 1-800-878-2646 or visit us on the web, uscoincapital.com.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics.
Some say standing up for what you believe in is being extreme. Ask any woman in Wyoming. They'll tell you this is called courage. The mainstream media claims that holding the line on important issues is being unreasonable. My mom taught me this is called staying true to our principles. In other places, people argue you always have to compromise to get something done. Here in Wyoming, we know that some things are worth protecting at all costs. Some say it's time we give up on the values that made our state great to accommodate toxic culture. I say it's time to stand tall and protect the values that have served Wyoming well for over 134 years. Join Honor Wyoming as we defend and preserve the Wyoming way of life. Find out how you can make a difference today.
Visit honorwyoming.org. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson, Cowboy State Politics Live, doing what I was born to do each and every day, having more fun than anybody should be legally allowed to have. But it's amazing that you can have a job that you just absolutely love. Thank you for listening to the program, my friends. Without you, I wouldn't be there would be no point to doing what I'm doing. So thank you for listening to the program. Coming up, we've got the Cowboy State Politics podcast shortly after I finish the live program. It's an interview with U.S. Representative Harriet Hageman about the big, beautiful bill and all the riots in L.A. And I've just been dying to get her thoughts. So that's going to be on the podcast directly after today's show. And I guess I should turn back the camera. See, I don't have a producer today, so I got to do all this stuff myself. Back in the saddle again. Anyway. So during the Biden administration, the vast majority of jobs, and if you remember, we constantly heard how, the 10 million jobs were created, just ridiculous numbers of jobs. But the Biden administration was always claiming that there were these huge job increases. And the truth is, it's none of them were actually real at all. All of them were made up. And if they weren't made up, well, then they were entirely government jobs. And so, and actually, before I forget, if you want to be part of the program, go ahead and give me a call, 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. The phone lines are open. Go ahead and give me a call. I realize that the automated system is a little bit hard, a little bit tiresome, but that's the only way that I can do this on my own. And let's be honest, it's not nearly as bad as if you were to call into some national program. So anyway, give me a call if you want to talk to me. I would love to hear what's on your mind. One more time, that number is 307-374-8989. All right, so as it turns out, over a quarter of the jobs that Biden created were private sector jobs. Excuse me, I've got that wrong. Only around 75% of the jobs added under the Biden administration's 2 years in office were added in the private sector. Now, when we hear the word, the phrase jobs created, we tend to think that, there's some guy that opened up a business and hired a whole bunch of people, or a business expanded and needed to hire more employees. That's what immediately comes to mind. And politicians play off of that because they know that that's what you assume is going on. But the truth of the matter is, under Biden's administration, a large percentage of those were in the public sector. Think about those 80,000 IRS agents that he hired. A perfect example of it. From the Post-Millennial, under President Donald Trump's first few months in office during his second term, 99.8% of all job growth was in the private sector, in comparison to around 75% in the last 2 years of the Biden administration. In a press release, the White House touted the job numbers, saying that, quote, since President Trump took office, 99.8% of jobs have been in the private sector. During the final 2 years of the Biden administration, 1 in 4 jobs were created in government, or 25% of job growth. The jobs report for the month of May saw 139,000 jobs added to the economy, surpassing expectations from the Dow Jones, as some have had doubts about the impact of Trump's tariff policies would have on the economy. The Bureau of Labor Statistics said that total non-farm payroll employment increased by 139,000, and the unemployment rate was unchanged at 4.2%, saying that unemployment continued to trend up in healthcare, leisure, hospitality, social assistance, and government continued to lose jobs, as it rightfully should. We should not have a large percentage of government workers on the payroll. And, we're kind of in upside down land when it comes to the labor market. When I was growing up, those folks that worked for the government, whether you worked for the city or, the county or the BLM or the Forest Service, I lived in Buffalo, so there's a lot of government there, or the school. You didn't really make a big giant wage. Those careers were not set up for you to get rich on, nor to, make that great of a living. You got pretty much an average wage. Now, the benefits were a little bit better, and you had access to, pretty much any health care that you wanted, but your actual take-home pay was not nearly as much as what it would be in the private sector. And at that time, if you wanted to make a good living, if you wanted to, strike it rich, or however you want to phrase it, you went into the private sector. You don't go into government. Well, we've kind of reversed that, where the vast majority of government jobs pay a heck of a good wage, in some cases way more than in the private sector. There's pensions that are absolutely out of this world. And the truth is, even in Wyoming, we have a giant unfunded pension. By unfunded, I mean the money is not in the bank to pay for all of the pensions that people have, that government workers have contributed to. And so we've we've upended the whole thing. And now, if you want a good, stable job, go work for the government, I guess. Now, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, let's see, I already read that one. Yeah, in addition to the increase in jobs in the private sector, wages rose as well as those working non-government jobs. Average hourly earnings for all employees on the private non-farm payrolls rose by 15 cents or 0.4% to $36.24 in May. Over the past 12 months, average hourly earnings have increased by 3.9%. In May, average hourly earnings of private sector production and non-supervisor employees rose by 12 cents or 0.4% to $31.18, the Bureau of Labor Statistics added to the jobs report. Now, White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said on the report, quote, President Trump's America First economic agenda has created a booming economy. Jobs are up, unemployment is down, wages are increasing, and inflation is dead. More than 139,000 good jobs were added. So the truth is, the job increases that we're seeing are happening in the private sector, and that's where they should be. We should not see increases in government jobs. And if we do, there's something dreadfully wrong with our economy. And that's what Democrats always do, is they are in favor of bigger, more expansive government, more government spending. So it stands to reason that when you get a Democrat in office, you're going to have more government jobs, and all of them, generally speaking, have something to do with controlling whatever it is that you are that you're doing, your life choices, controlling the things that you do in your daily life. What light bulbs you put in your house, to what kind of cars you drive, what kind of dishwasher you buy, refrigerator, whatever. But it's all those people. I mean, it's kind of like the Dr. Seuss book, like the Bee Watcher. Everybody remember that story? Ken brought this up yesterday on the program. Well, in the story, it's determined that the bee is not producing enough honey, not doing enough work. So they hire a bee watcher. Well, the productivity of the bee does not increase with the bee watcher. So obviously the bee watcher is not watching the bee. So they hire a bee watcher. And pretty soon at the end of the story, there's the bee watching the watcher of the bee. I mean, and it is ridiculous. But that's government right there. That instead of actually doing something productive in the private sector, it's the government philosophy that you hire oversight, that you increase regulation, that you increase the amount of people that are making sure that other people do the work. When in reality, if those people would actually go to work and create something, open a business, go build something, then the economy increases. But you see, Republicans, we look at this entirely different, that we don't want a bigger, more expansive government. In fact, what we want is a more expansive private sector, that we're creating wealth and creating new economic development. And there's another phrase that you hear all the time from these government types, economic development. Well, the truth is that it is impossible for government to create economic development because, by definition, if you are using taxpayer dollars, that's money that's already been generated because of private investment and in the private sector. It's already been taxed. And so if you're using that money to attempt to create more, really the only thing you're doing is recycling the same funds. And so anytime you hear of any of these 1% dollars, this is a big thing in Wyoming, 1% dollars, this optional 1 cent, we give it to all these nonprofits. See, if we do that, we can help them with their wages, we can help them with their, buy equipment or whatever. Well, that's not actually increasing any economic output, simply because you're just recycling dollars that have already been taxed on revenue that's already been generated. You're not creating anything new. You're not creating any more new jobs. You're not doing anything of the sort. So, it's absolutely ridiculous. So moving on, I'm going to try something that I haven't tried before while I've been running the program. I found this video on YouTube. It's a good laugh, but it's the Starship Enterprise. coming across a signal from Joe Biden. Let's see if this works. And my apologies if it doesn't work, if you can't hear the sound or whatever, but we're trying something new. So here we go.
Captain, a most curious development on scanner 5-7.
That's all. Take a look at it, Mr. Spock.
Screen on, Captain.
Hardly wait to compare my cognitive capability to the cognitive capability of the man I'm running against. It's just, but you gotta, I mean, we gotta reassure, look, play the radio, make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night, the phone, make sure the kids hear words. COVID has taken this year, just since the outbreak, has taken more than 100 years. Look, here's the lives, when you think about it. That's why I made it a priority my entire career to work closely with you. From the time I got to the Senate 180 years ago. We cannot get reelected. We cannot win this reelection. We can only reelect Donald Trump.
I mean, you can't help but laugh at this stuff.
Wake up. My name's Joe Biden. I'm a Democratic candidate for the United States Senate. Look me over. If you like what you see, help out. If not, vote for the other Biden.
All right, my friends. I mean, obviously funny, but I felt that same way during the Biden administration, that I was on some sort of episode of Star Trek, and they've encountered a new and unusual life form that doesn't make any sense. But hopefully that worked. If not, well, we'll try something different. You know, I mean, it's new. Something new to try while I'm trying to produce my own show here in the studio, which I guess, you know, another good example of ingenuity. See, here at Cowboy State Politics, we produce a quality show. Well, I mean, when Ken's here, we produce a quality show. When I'm here, you know, it's just kind of we do whatever. But anyway, we try our best to use the resources that we have, and hopefully we do a good job doing it. Now, one of the things that Americans tend to take for granted, and I think that we all do. I don't, but because my entire career, what I do for a living functions on the First Amendment. But I think that a lot of people tend to take it for granted. There will always have the First Amendment, that you can say whatever you want without repercussion. I mean, you have to take responsibility for what you say. With rights come responsibilities. But there are other places in the world where the First Amendment does not exist, where you don't have the ability to say whatever you want without fear of reprisal. And one of those places is in Canada. This is a terrifying story here. Comedian sentenced to 8 years in prison for telling jokes. Now, the judge allegedly cited Wikipedia during the conviction. Listen to this. A Brazilian comedian said a judge took issue with his Wikipedia page when she handed down an 8-year prison sentence. Comedian Leo Lins, whose full name is Leonardo de Lima Borges Lins, was about 3 years removed from his comedy special when Judge Barbara de Lima Isepi ruled the comedian made discriminatory remarks while he was on stage. The comments the judge made during her ruling have been perceived as, quote, power-hungry by other comedians who expressed shock at their compatriot's conviction. Quote, this is indicative of what's coming to America, and it's happening in this world already. Lynn's 2022 special called Disturbing was ordered to be taken down from the internet by the Brazilian government in 2023, according to the Euro Weekly News. Since then, it has garnered millions of views or uploads by third parties. According to the outlet, the court found that Lynn's performances have contributed to the, quote, spread of verbal violence in society, and they tend to promote intolerance. Judge Isepi added, quote, freedom of expression cannot be used as an excuse to make hurtful, prejudiced, or discriminatory remarks. Those remarks, also known as jokes, allegedly contained material about the following groups: black people, obese people, elderly people, those living with HIV, homosexuals, evangelicals, indigenous communities, people from impoverished northeast of Brazil, Jews, and people with disabilities. In a video uploaded by Lynn's on Thursday, the comedian alleged that the judge made several bizarre remarks during the sentencing, including citing Wikipedia as her source for the claims. Quote, Wikipedia, Linz bluntly said in the video. Let's see here. This is not a joke, he continued. Imagine an innocent man accused of murder. The judge says, quote, did you kill? He says, no. She goes on his Wikipedia page where people can lie. Boom. Yes. Convicted. That's how ridiculous this entire sentence is. Linz also claimed that the judge, even though the jokes, quote, happened in a theater, they became hurtful when they left the theater and showed up online. According to The Blaze, who reached out to different comedians who have faced cancellations from comedy clubs over the years due to their content, including Leonardo Joni, who shared the news of Linz's conviction with her 215,000 ex-followers. Quote, this is indicative of what's coming to America, and it's happening around the world already. Joni, who is Albanian, said that everyone should be concerned with the, quote, imposition on the freedom of speech. Notice how you can't joke about the predetermined or protected groups, but you can say whatever you want about white people, she said. It's about the only group that he didn't poke fun at, though probably, and that's just the one that the Judge Giuseppe didn't really care about. My friends, when it comes to the First Amendment, really the only right that you do have is to be offended. If you don't have the right to be offended, then we don't have free speech at all. Think about it. If I don't have the right to say something that's going to tick you off, then there's no free speech. That means that the only thing that we can do is say things that make people feel good, which is ridiculous. Excuse me. The point here is that free speech is one of those. I mean, I happen to be one of those free speech absolutists. I think to the greatest degree possible, we should absolutely respect everybody's right to say whatever they want. Now, we have restrictions on that. You can't slander people. You can't libel people. Slander is saying something about someone that's not true. Libel is printing something that's not true. But other than that, we shouldn't have any restrictions on free speech. Now, everybody's heard the phrase, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Well, that's not true at all. Oliver Wendell Holmes was on the left. He absolutely wanted to control the speech of a communist sympathizer who was spreading pamphlets around. Oliver Wendell Holmes absolutely wanted to control that. But the truth is, you can yell fire in a crowded theater. You're just responsible for whatever happens afterwards. So, for example, if you create a riot and somebody gets trampled, well, that's the result of your actions, and you need to be held responsible for it. But just saying fire in a crowded theater, you can absolutely do that. So long as nobody gets hurt, you're not infringing on anybody else's rights, there's no reason why you can't. My friends, free speech is freedom of expression, the freedom of religion, all of those things are, in my opinion, the bedrock of where all of our rights start. Now, there's a reason why the Second Amendment comes after the First, because it protects the First Amendment. We absolutely have to protect the First Amendment. And in countries where they don't have a constitution and they don't have a Bill of Rights, you can see what happens. I mean, the same sort of thing is happening in Great Britain, where, if you say something or post something wrong or that somebody deems to be offensive, well, then you can be held criminally liable for it. Absolutely outrageous. So what I'm saying, my friends, is you need to take better care of your First Amendment rights. And, that's to some degree, no, to all degree, the right to redress to seek redress of grievances. Absolutely. I mean, all of those things. And we have to be very cognizant of attacks on our free speech. And you need to defend the people that piss you off, that say things that make you feel bad, that make you irritated, that make you mad. They have a right to say those things too. Now, what they don't have a right to do is to threaten or to harass or, those sorts of things. But the point is that we need to be free speech absolutists. If not, the same sort of stuff that's happening in Canada is going to happen here. Now, speaking of things that, let's see here. What else? I got more stuff in the stack of stuff here. Let's go here. This one's fascinating. Now, quite a while ago, I brought you the story of Brandon Gill, who was cross-examining the CEO of NPR. Now, I can't remember her name. Her last name is Marr, Catherine Marr, maybe. Anyway, she put up a number of different tweets that are absolutely shocking about how terrible white people are and how we have to pray reparations. Well, Brandon Gill is at it again. But before I get there, let me play you a little bit his interaction with the NPR CEO, and then we're going to go to his discussion with the CEO of 23andMe. It's not quite as funny as NPR, but I think it deserves a hearing. So here's what happened with his cross-examination of the NPR CEO. We'll just listen to a little bit of this. It's kind of long, but we'll get a taste of it.
Do you believe that America is addicted to white supremacy?
I believe that I tweeted that, and as I've said earlier, I believe much of my thinking has evolved over the last half decade.
It has evolved. Why did you tweet that?
I don't recall the exact context, sir, so I wouldn't be able to say.
Okay. Do you believe that America believes in black plunder and white democracy?
I don't believe that, sir.
You tweeted that in reference to a book you were reading at the time, apparently, The Case for Reparations.
I don't think I've ever read that book, sir.
You tweeted about it. You said you took a day off to fully read The Case for Reparations. You put that on Twitter in January of 2020.
Apologies, I don't recall that I did.
Okay.
I'd no doubt that your tweet there is correct, but I don't recall that.
Okay. Do you believe that white people inherently feel superior to other races?
I do not.
You don't? You tweeted something to that effect. You said, I grew up feeling superior. How white of me. Why did you tweet that?
I think I was probably reflecting on what it was to grow up in an environment where I had lots of advantages.
It sounds like you're saying that white people feel superior.
I don't believe that anybody feels that way.
All right.
It's just reflecting.
This is like the slow motion, like the old westerns with the gunfighters, and the hero is just drilling the guy with shot after shot, and you see the slow motion of his opponent flailing backwards. That's what that was like. And it goes on for another. The whole clip is like 2 minutes 51 seconds long. So it goes on for another minute and a half. Well, he did very much the same thing with the CEO of 23andMe. Let's see here. Where is this one from? I think it's from The Blaze. But anyway, Representative Brandon Gill said that Ann Wojcicki took a genetics company and turned it into a woke social justice organization. And I quote, Representative Brandon Gill grilled the 23andMe co-founder and former CEO on Tuesday about a social media post regarding transgender pronouns, forcing her to admit that she is, quote, not up to speed on what they mean. Lawmakers are in the process of launching an investigation to assess the risk of 23andMe users' genetic data being transferred to third-party buyers amid the company's bankruptcy. The CEO testified before a U.S. House committee a few months after she stepped down as the CEO of the genetics analysis company in March. While the hearing was focused on data privacy as the company potentially changes hands, Gill questioned the former CEO about a politically charged post and the company's official X account made under her watch. 23andMe has really, over the past few years, gone out of its way to show how woke it is. And one of the things that it's been promoting, among many others, is a variety of different pronouns, he said. Science shows using correct using pronouns can impact trans people's health by significantly reducing their risk of depression and suicide. This is one of the many reasons why we've been working to. Okay, on and on and on. But let's go ahead and listen to Brandon Gill. This is pretty good. Here you go.
23andMe has really, over the past few years, gone out of its way to show how woke it is. And one of the things that it's been promoting, amongst many others, is a variety of different pronouns. Here's a tweet that you guys put out in June of 2021.
Okay, just hold on just a second. I'm going to try to throw this up on the screen so you can see what he's referring to. Let's see here. Maybe. Oh, there it goes. Okay, great. So there's the tweet that was put out, and you can see all of those pronouns there. He, him, she, her, they, them, whatever those others are. But this is what Brandon Gill is questioning her about. Let's continue.
I just want to ask you, what does E mean as a pronoun? It's E.
To be honest, I'm not sure.
Okay. Do you know what M means as a pronoun?
I'm also not sure.
Okay. Don't you think it's important to know what these mean? You guys are in this post, you wrote, or somebody on your comms team wrote, that using the correct pronouns impacts trans people's health, can reduce the risk of depression and suicide. That's a pretty serious claim. It seems like if you're going to demand people use these pronouns, you would know what they mean, right?
Mm-hmm. I delegate. 23andMe handled a lot of people. We had 6,
Right.
7.
You were CEO though, right?
I was CEO, but it doesn't
Okay.
mean I can oversee every single post.
Well, this is a very, very politically charged post that you guys put out. I would think that you would have a view on that.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us what is the difference between Z and Z? One of them is ZE and one is XE.
I'm not up to speed on that.
Okay. Does it concern you that not understanding this might increase the risk of depression and suicide amongst trans people?
I support my research team that felt that
Okay, all right,
it's
hold on,
important for
hold
us
on,
to
hold
be
on.
inclusive of everybody.
Okay, so let's go back to the tweet that they put out, and then let me just see if I can go here. Image. Here we go. There it goes. Okay, so and it might be difficult to read on the screen, but here's what it says: science shows using correct pronouns can impact trans people's health by significantly reducing their risk of depression and suicide. This is one of the main reasons why we have been working hard to improve our product for trans and non-binary customers, the post said, along with a graphic that shows all of those supposed pronouns. And here, the question from Brandon Gill was, well, if you don't understand these things, doesn't that pose a mental health risk for, trans people? I mean, that's the claim made by this 23andMe company, that if you don't understand what those are, then obviously, then you're putting trans people at risk. It's absolutely crazy. Let's go ahead and let it continue. Maybe if I can find it. Well, anyway, hold on. I'll have to go back to it. But the point here is that all of these woke companies make all of these ridiculous claims that if you don't acknowledge somebody's choice, that if you don't participate in their delusion, then somehow you're damaging them. Somehow you're putting them at risk for harming themselves. And it's absolutely ridiculous, my friends. If I don't participate in your own choice, that doesn't mean that it's harmful for you. It might hurt your self-image. I might tell you that you're wrong. I might give you 27 reasons why you're absolutely off your rocker, but that in no way damages your self. It might damage your self-image, I suppose, if I told you how many ways that you're wrong. But let's go back to this sound. I'll try to fast forward and go back to where we were.
23andMe has really...
I respect the social team and the research team that put that post together.
Mm-hmm. But you don't know what any of these pronouns mean, but you guys are promoting it.
I assume it's different ways people like to be referred to.
What about here? HIR. What does that mean?
I don't know either.
What about
I don't know.
Fair. FAEFAER.
Again.
You'd agree these are pretty unusual things, wouldn't you?
I think they represent a lot of the diversity in this country.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to understand the diversity, and I'm asking you what they mean. I'll give you one more chance. Do you know what Z here, Z, Zim, Fair, EM mean?
I do not.
Okay. Does that concern you that you don't know it? According to your own post here, understanding these and using the correct pronouns would improve your product for trans and non-binary people. It seems like this is directly related to the product.
Again, it was the team, the social team and the research team that felt strongly around
Well, you were CEO, so you can't.
Yeah, so don't take responsibility for anything that you're doing. Blame it on somebody else. Absolutely ridiculous. And this is what all these woke CEOs do. When they're hauled before Congress and made to account for the things that they say, the things that they do, they won't accept responsibility for what they're doing. Got to blame it on somebody else, which is and I think that probably above anything exposes the hypocrisy in a lot of their arguments. I mean, it's virtue signaling. It's no different than Target. You remember a year ago when Target had that really, really offensive display in their stores. In some stores, there was a satanic display, and there was one that was during the month of June that was had swimsuits for little boys where they could, tuck their stuff in. I mean, absolutely crazy. Well, there was such an uprising or a reaction to that the sales for Target kind of went in the toilet a little bit. Well, now if you go into a Target, I was in one a couple of weeks ago, and whoops, not one of those displays to be found. Now, it's not because the people that run that company have actually had a change of heart or a change in belief or anything like that. Rather, they've had a change in their bottom line, and they've realized that their adherence to all of this woke stupidity really does hurt their profits. And it hurts their shareholders too, which is another bizarre thing, that you have radicals like this 23andMe CEO. And this one's a little bit different than NPR. NPR, that used to be publicly funded. This is a private company. But you see a drop in their overall sales. And then a lot of these folks, they continue to persist in their woke ideology. One of the worst examples, one that really ticked me off, was Harley Davidson. They had this whole woke training, and there was a big uproar about it. Tractor Supply was another one. John Deere was another one, where it was exposed what these companies are doing to their employees. And here, in this case, again, this hearing was about data privacy and what was going to happen with all of that genetic data that 23andMe had compiled from all of their customers. What was going to happen to that when the company was sold through bankruptcy? That's what the hearing was about. But Brandon Gill took the opportunity to call this woman, on the carpet and ask her some questions. It ended with, let's see here. Yeah, I don't have the exact quotation, but the end of it is, again, it's just somebody else being held accountable. Another one of these companies that they virtue signal. They try to convince you things that are not entirely true and expect you to give them more money. Speaking of other companies that think of things that aren't true, USA Today. This one's a fantastic story. USA Today was obliterated online over a bizarre claim about transgender athletes. Yesterday, I brought you the story of Simone Biles and Riley Gaines having a little tit for tat, a little back and forth over Simone Biles attacking, or I don't even understand the terms in all this, but apparently it was like body shaming. Simone Biles called Riley Gaines a man, which, by the way, Riley Gaines is way more attractive than Simone Biles. But anyway, so now USA Today is making some bizarre claims about transgender athletes. Quote, the claim is at the center of a debate over biological males competing against females. An opinion column in USA Today has led to every reaction between bewilderment and abject ridicule for its insane attempt to reframe the debate about trans-identifying athletes. The opinion column, written by Nancy Armour, praised Olympic champion Simone Biles for her hysterical attacks on former swimming star Riley Gaines, who was defending female athletes from unfair competition from biological males identifying, and I hate that word identifying, claiming is a better term for it. They're claiming to be females, not identifying as a female. That's absolutely stupid. Where it's an attempt to use language to get away from what you're actually doing, to try to obfuscate the truth. You're pretending to be a female. Quote, how foolish. This is what LGBTQ brainwashing does. It turns brains to mush. After gushing over Biles' attack on Gaines, Armour made the bizarre claim that there was no scientific evidence of a gender disparity in sports. Right. Yeah. Before the program today, I did a little searching online, and a couple of different scientific journals basically said that, and I'm not a scientist, I'm just kind of trying to get an average of the numbers I saw, that basically your average man is twice as strong in the upper body as women are. There's more muscle mass in their lower body than the average guy versus the average woman. There's more muscle mass there. Obviously, they're stronger. Obviously, they're faster. And it's just... And the thing is, it doesn't mean that one is better than the other. It just means you're different. That's it. I know a lot of big, strong guys that are dumb as a post. That doesn't mean that they're any better or any worse. It just means that they're big and they're strong, and they do what they do. And we have to get to a place, my friends, where we accept the truth that people are different. That there are differences between people. Not everybody is as strong. Not everybody is as smart. Not everybody is as good behind a microphone. Not everybody can throw a baseball at 102 miles an hour. The truth is that people are different, but that doesn't make it good or bad. It just means you're different. And, when we look at like jobs, the jobscape or the job market, jobscape, I wonder where I came up with that one. Anyway, the job market is a really good example. Now, we need people who make computer chips. We need people who design excavators. We need people who get behind a microphone and give you the news. We need people who dig ditches. We need people who put pipelines together to bring energy. We need coal miners. We need mechanics to keep the machines running. All of those things are valuable. It doesn't mean that one is good and one is bad. It means that they're all valuable and they're just different. And we have to get to a point where we accept the reality that people are different. They have different skills. They look differently. Some people are more attractive than others. And it doesn't mean that there's any less value in one or the other. It just means that we're all different. We're all unique. And that, in and of itself, our uniqueness is where the value is, that everybody is different. Everybody comes up with different ideas and different thoughts. And until we get to a place where we can accept that, we're still going to have stupid arguments like this. So in the piece, this idiot argued that there's no scientific evidence to support the claim that males identifying as females have an advantage over biological females because there just aren't enough athletes to complete a scientific study of their differences. The nonsensical claim was immediately mocked on social media. Quote, "Leftism is like an Ouroboros. If you wait long enough, it will eat itself. The first wave feminism of the early 20th century has morphed into this, where female greatness is now defined as saying men must be included in women's spaces," responded writer Kimberly Ross. "This is a religious profession of faith at this point," said Washington Free Beacon editor Pete Hassan. What an absolutely pathetic headline by misogynistic USA Today, said Robert Gagnon. Is Biles fine with males competing with her in floor tumbling or the vault? Had enough males done so, she might not have even made the Olympic team, ever, let alone won a medal. How foolish. This is what LGBTQ brainwashing does. It turns your brain to mush. Others pointed out the incongruity of Armour protecting her X account from her critics. Protects her tweets, but doesn't think that women should be protected from physically competing against men, writer Anna James Ziegler said. USA Today was similarly excoriated recently when a news article appeared to sympathize with the family of the suspect in the horrific terror attack on pro-Israel demonstrators in Boulder, Colorado. The White House said the suspect's wife and 5 children were illegally present in the U.S. and could be fast-tracked for deportation. So my point being, my friends, is that when we slip into this woke nonsense and saying that women are equal to men, that they're just as strong, that they're just as fast, you're absolutely denying reality. And it goes to the point I was making earlier, that we have to accept the principle and the fact that we are all different. We have different skills, different gifts, and it doesn't mean that one is any better than the other. Now, it might be if it's a contest of wits, or if it's a contest of knowledge, sure, somebody might be smarter than you. Okay, you might be better at something else than they are. The truth is, you just have to accept that fact. Well, let's go ahead and take our last break. And when we come back, some news from Greta Thunberg. Oh, man, if you didn't love Trump before, you're absolutely going to love him even more. I mean, if that's even possible. I mean, every day. I thought when he wasn't president, I just missed him saying China. Now I realize how much I absolutely love him, and I'll tell you why when we come back. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election. Siberia, Nova Scotia. I'm definitely moving to Canada. Straight to hell. Iceland, France. Asia's pretty cool.
And has the past 5 weeks just been more than you could bear? If that's the case, you have come to the right place. All you need to do is call my friend Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. This program is only going to continue to expand from every county in this state to every state in this country. It's Cowboy State Politics. Number 35 on the list of 100 podcasts you should listen to in 2025. That's true, my friends. There is not another podcast in the state of Wyoming that has that one. Cowboy State Politics is the most listened to podcast in the great state of Wyoming. Definitely one that you don't want to miss. And today I'm going to release the interview I did this morning with Representative Harriet Hageman. It's pretty quick, but she talks about two of the big things that are happening right now: the big beautiful bill and all the dumb idiots that are rioting down in Los Angeles. So we get her take on both of it, and I'll publish that probably by 11 o'clock, I think. Now, before Trump was president, I found myself wishing that I could hear him say China one more time, or hear him accost the fake news from the bully pulpit just one more time. But now I realize that there's much more to Trump than just those few things that I remember. And every day that he's asked a stupid question, well, he just comes back with another one. Let me tell you about it. Yesterday, he was asked about old Greta Thunberg. And, I thought about getting a soundbite from her saying, "How dare you," to the United Nations, but I didn't torture you with that. From Breitbart News, Trump defends Israel, slams Greta Thunberg after Gaza blockade incident. She's a strange, angry person. And I quote, President Donald Trump criticized left-wing Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg, calling her a very strange and angry person who should attend anger management classes, following her claims of being kidnapped after her boat was intercepted by Israeli forces off the Gaza coast. On Monday, Israeli naval forces boarded a flotilla vessel attempting to breach the maritime blockade surrounding Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip. Among the international activists on board was 22-year-old Greta Thunberg, whose participation drew sharp global attention and a swift reaction from President Trump. She's a very strange person. She's a young and angry person. Well, why don't I just let Trumpy say it? You're going to love this.
Do you have a message for Greta Thunberg, and did she come up on your call with the Prime Minister today?
Well, she's a strange person. She's a young, angry person. I don't know if it's real anger. It's hard to believe, actually, but I saw what happened. She's certainly different. Anger management. I think she has to go to an anger management class. That's my primary recommendation.
Oh, anger management. I love it. Not giving her any more airtime than she absolutely richly deserves, which is nothing. And the only reason that she's a celebrity is she allowed, or her parents manipulated, I shouldn't say she allowed, but her parents manipulated her to be this crazy wacko climate change activist who really doesn't have any idea what's going on in the real world. She just needs to go away. Go back to Sweden, do your own thing, sail your sailboat, and leave me the heck alone. Leave the rest of the country the heck alone. I mean, it's just, I don't want to hear from you. And by the way, her flotilla to go into Gaza, what would have happened had it actually reached the coast, do you suppose? You suppose those Hamas folks were going to welcome them with open arms? Or do you suppose that they might take them hostage like they did all of the people on October 7th? Oh, and by the way, when the Israelis took all of those folks on this dumb flotilla into custody, one of the, they didn't sentence them to prison or anything, but one of the things they wanted them to do is watch footage from October 7th. Watch what Hamas did. And Greta Thunberg refused to do that. So it shows you how committed that she is to the truth. She's only committed to her own version of it and her own stupid narrative. And I mean, I guess it's good for a good laugh every now and again, but that's about all that it amounts to. Let's see. We've got about 10 minutes left in the program, and I want to finish it by talking about something that's going on here in Wyoming. And this is a piece from the Cowboy. It's entitled, "As New Homeschool Laws Take Effect, Some Schools Push to Limit Sports and Activities." Now, the way the statute reads right now is that even if you are homeschooling your kids get to participate in activities, football, basketball, whatever, wood shop. That's in statute. But there's a number of school districts in Wyoming that are trying to limit the access simply because parents choose to homeschool their kids. And all of it relates to money. After the program yesterday, Agent 29 and I were talking about this, and it all boils down to the average daily membership. And if you don't know what that is, that's the amount of students that you have on average day to day in your school, and that relates to how much money you get from the state of Wyoming. So schools, they want to have the greatest amount of average daily membership as possible. Now, the problem here is if you're a homeschool, and it's not a problem, I think it's absolutely on target. Everybody pays taxes, everybody pays towards education, and there's no reason why a school district should be able to restrict a person's participation in sports. Well, pay for it, so there's no reason why anybody can say, they're not going to honor that, that statute or whatever. But let's go into the Cowboy here, and I quote, "Some Wyoming public school districts are moving towards restricting homeschool families' access to pre-high school level sports and activities, just as two new laws empowering the homeschool movement are taking effect. A few public school superintendents theorize their peers are digging in their heels against the homeschool empowerment laws, so they don't have to participate in their own demise." That doesn't make any sense. Wyoming Superintendent of Public Instruction Megan Degenfelder, however, told Cowboy State Daily on Tuesday that she will propose a law change in the coming weeks to prevent the districts from limiting homeschoolers' access to middle school and junior high level activities. Meanwhile, the Wyoming Freedom Caucus, a group of socially conservative-leaning Republican lawmakers and a significant driver of the new laws, says the districts are defying them. Wyoming law requires school districts to let homeschool students participate in sanctioned high school sports and activities. It doesn't require the districts open up middle school or junior high school to those activities, but most of them traditionally do. In Wyoming legislature's lawmaking session, it passed two homeschool empowerment laws. One of them was House Bill 46, and that says that homeschool families are no longer required to submit their curricula to the school district, and House Bill 199, which was the so-called ESA bill. But this goes back to schools wanting control. And all of it, and I mean, there are two things that school boards and school districts want. One, they want control, and two, they want the money. The only way that they can get the money from the state is if they keep their average daily membership up. And there's no reason why a homeschool family shouldn't be able to participate in school sports, and let me tell you why. We all pay taxes. All of us pay into into our public school system. And so just because a family chooses to school their kids at home, theoretically, they're not taking up any money as it relates to labor, school, the school maintenance, the teachers, any of that. So you don't have to pay for that kid. So there should be no reason why your child shouldn't be able to participate in the football team or basketball team or whatever. It's just idiomatic and ideologically fueled school board members are just digging in their heels. And they don't want to admit that state law says that people can homeschool their kids. Let me give you another example of where school districts are just ignoring the law. The House Bill 172, the repeal of gun-free zones. School districts across the state of Wyoming are trying to enact policies that make it virtually impossible for a person to carry a gun inside the school. Agent 29 told me yesterday that in Natrona County, they've passed a policy that requires 56 hours of live fire training before you can be an employee and carry your gun on school property. 56 hours. That's more than an entire week's worth of work of just live fire training. I don't know of that many people that are going to go through with that. And really, it's just an attempt to make it so burdensome that you don't go through with it, that you don't carry a gun, or that you don't even ask the school. Really, it's an attempt to skirt the spirit of the law. The spirit of House Bill 172 is that you can carry a gun anywhere you want. And the only reason why there are restrictions available in the statute for school districts is so that the law would pass. Because the folks down in the legislature knew that if given the opportunity, school boards, superintendents, fill in the list, would do everything they can to subvert the law. And that is exactly what's happening. And the truth is, like, I went to a forum here in Sheridan that was put on by the school district, and the number one thing that I learned there is that we have a lot of people in our education system that absolutely hate guns, that they don't understand them. They're so stuck in their Democrat mindset that they can't even fathom the idea that maybe children are safer if there's a firearm around. I mean, it's just, but again, I mean, it's school districts attempting to skirt Wyoming law. And I mean, the Wyoming legislature really needs to crack down and say, no, you will follow the law. Here's what happens if you don't. We'll decertify your school or whatever. I mean, there has to be some penalty. And it's a sad commentary that we have to have laws that specifically say you have to follow the law. But I guess that's where we're at. And, we just have to accept the reality of our situation. Well, we burned up another busy 2 hours on the program. Make sure that you don't miss Cowboy State Politics, the podcast, in about an hour. I'll have the interview with Harriet Hageman posted, and then we'll play that interview tomorrow on the program. It's kind of short, but I think there's some important things that Harriet mentions. So we'll do that tomorrow. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. I'll see you tomorrow.